Hi, and welcome to the Connection Over Perfection podcast. I am Amber McCrae, your therapeutic nutritionist and host. Join me on a holistic healing journey where we explore the power of nutrition and connection for your overall well-being, where we embrace connection over perfection. Trigger warning. Sensitive content, including discussions about sexual abuse, will be addressed in this episode. If you find this topic distressing or triggering, please take care of yourself and consider skipping this episode. Your well-being is so important to us. Hey there, amazing souls. It's a pleasure to have a returning guest to our show today. You remember her as the incredible Phoenix, a true inspiration in her journey of healing from sexual trauma. Her openness and wisdom have touched our hearts before, reminding us that even in our darkest moments, there's strength and resilience within us. Today, we're taking a closer look at Phoenix's journey, the challenges she's faced, and the incredible tools she's discovered along the way. Her story is not just one of survival, but of thriving, as she's transformed into an expert multipreneur. Phoenix's experiences and insights offer a powerful testament to the human spirit's capacity for healing and growth. So let's jump right in and continue this enlightening conversation with Phoenix, where we will explore her path through sexual trauma, the obstacles she's conquered, and the wisdom she's gained. Get ready for an inspiring and deeply insightful discussion. Phoenix, thank you and welcome back.
Thank you for having me back. I appreciated my goddess and queen, Amber.
I always love our conversations. You just lift me up. Your words are always so encouraging.
And so are you. I go to your page on your TikTok sometimes just for the inspiration, especially when you were doing the 30-day challenge. I'm like, I got to go get myself some Amber affirmations. Fuck mine. I got to go get hers.
I love that.
No disrespect to my affirmations in my book, but sometimes, like for instance, a friend of mine, her name is Evelyn Jimenez, and she has a spiritual jewelry line called Spirit in Motion. And so I felt intuitively called to call her and be like, hey, sis, can you make me a pair of earrings? And she made me a pair of earrings with black obsidian and lapis. And sometimes my stuff works on me, but if I know someone that I trust in the spiritual industry, that can actually help heighten my protection and my truth and everything else, then I'm going to enlist them. So when it comes to when you were doing the affirmations on TikTok, I'm like, okay, my sis Amber got some good affirmations. I'm going to go on there and she's going to pour into me through TikTok. And that's how we're going to do that.
I love that. And see, that's just one of the things of many that I love about you is that you are very aware that there is space for all of us and we are give and take in this. We're doing the same exact thing.
Exactly.
Give and take from one another, feed off each other's energy and heighten it.
Yeah, for sure. Because even if there's another goddess that's doing bracelets and anklets and waist beads or coaching or whatever, just like I do, but I feel like my client would benefit more from them, I would send them to them. Like, okay, this person is more aligned with you. I'm gonna stay in my lane and you could do your thing over there, and I'm good with it. Because I feel like there's so much money out there for us to grab.
Right.
You know what I mean? And opportunities and blessings. And what's for me is always going to be for me. What's for you is always going to be for you.
Right.
But if I can offer some form of support to another sisterpreneur, then I'm all for it. Like, it doesn't take anything away from me in no way, shape, or form.
Yes, I love that. That you don't come from that scarcity mindset, that there is enough for all of us.
Mm-hmm.
And that the universe always has your back and you're always taken care of.
Mm-hmm.
And you know that, like you said, what is for you is going to come to you.
Yeah.
I love that. Such a beautiful energy.
Thank you. It's about surrendering to what the flow is and being able to be present with self, where you're authentically, effortlessly, organically attracting all of the things as opposed to having to chase for it or work so fucking hard for it, or that hustle mindset where you could just be still with yourself and not have to worry. And that actually gives the universe and God of your own understanding an indication that, yes, I'm ready for what I know that you are offering me, and I'm willing, and I have faith within myself, and I believe in myself, and I believe that you got me.
I love that. And I'm just taking notes because I know what our next episode is going to be.
Not a problem at all. So fire away with all the questions.
I was like, okay, next episode with Phoenix is on entrepreneuring. Okay, got it.
Yes, for sure. Being a multipreneur and identifying all of the other gifts that you don't even know that you have and adding it to the business that you already have, creating innovative ideas around that, and creating business opportunities that actually create sustainable income so you can experience financial independence with yourself because these are gifts that you were given since the time you were born that you can operate off of as opposed to reinventing the wheel. The wheel's already there. It's just tapping into it. And that's why I coined myself a multipreneur because all of the things that I do is already gifted in me, like it's spiritually embodied in me.
Yeah,
And so I know that I can do it with my eyes closed, hands tied behind my back, and I love what I do. And so I get to experience spiritual, mental, emotional, and financial freedom because it's everything that's already done for me on my behalf. That way I'm consistently attracting clients all the time where I don't have to be like, oh, look at me, I'm doing this thing over here. No, they're like, shit, we see what she's doing. We see what she's all about, and I want to do that too.
that's beautiful. So, you guys, tune in to our next episode. We'll let you know when that's going to be all about that. That's amazing. But for today's episode, we are going to talk about your experience with sexual trauma. So, Phoenix, what inspired you to share your experiences, with this trauma openly, and how has that helped in your healing?
What inspired me to open up is because it's a part of the healing when you no longer gatekeep or close off yourself or isolate yourself mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. And when you talk about these things, it actually helps you to release that energy of disgust and despair and anxiety and feeling like a failure. Like I felt like a failure for a very long time. I was exceptionally promiscuous after I was molested by my mother's first husband from 7 to 14 off and on, and almost being raped by this man at the age of 13. And so it's so crazy how promiscuity just like literally is just like automated in the brain where you feel like that's love. You feel like, that's how you should be. And I always said that this is the analogy that I've always given. I am filet mignon, nicely seasoned on a plate with mashed potatoes and carrots and collard greens and cauliflower and all the things. And I put it on top of the garbage can, top container thingy. And I give it to the world and I say, here, have this. This is me. You can do whatever the hell you want with it because I don't give a fuck about myself. So, with me allowing people to abuse me, I was also abusing myself, and I had to come to terms with that. And the reason why I speak about it is because there's so many women and men, but more so women that go through abuse. There's not one woman, there's probably maybe 2 to 3 women I can count on one hand that have has not experienced sexual abuse in some way, shape, or form. And so for me, it's at a phone call come in. I remember I remember being that lost little girl that felt alone, felt depressed, felt like I had nobody. And even when I was in a room full of family members, I still felt very much alone. Very much alone. Like I did not exist. Nobody loved me. And I would go through bouts of suicidal ideations. You know what I mean? From 7 years old, what fucking kid at 7 years old should be thinking about suicide? Not one. And that continued throughout my whole life. And promiscuity was something that I became very good at. And I knew how to be a victim. I knew how to be the damsel, quote unquote, in distress. I mastered that. Like I have a fucking PhD in that shit. Even till this day, the reason why I like being in relationships, I'm a relationship type of girl, is because there is a part of me, a dark part of me that still has promiscuity because I have an insatiable sexual appetite. And for me, I don't want to be the person that I was in my 20s when I was sleeping around with Tom, Dick, Harry, da 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 da, to the point where I contracted genital warts. And I speak about it heavily because STDs are around and so on and so forth, and people need to like be more aware and be mindful of their bodies. And not only that, but you're not only giving your body to another person, but you're giving your spirit and your energy, and you're connecting these ties with these people. And you have no idea, like, the other people they've been with, if they have really dark energy, what type of spirits they attract. Like, you have no fucking idea. And for me, it was a lot. I had to do so much work, emotional, spiritual, mental, physical work on myself every single day. So I talk about it because when you're in spaces of going through depression and anxiety and having suicidal thoughts, and your body is just like going through shock, it's not easy. It's not easy. And so for me, it was very important as a public figure, as a leader, as an innovator, for me to talk about all of the things. I'm not going to sit up here and be like, well, look at me. I'm fully healed and I'm a writer and author, da, 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 and I can show you how to be a multipreneur. And I can show you, no, I want you to see every aspect of who Phoenix is, who Dillis is, that's my first name, who Victoria is, that's my middle name. I want you to see all of me. I don't want to be up in these social media streets. Oh yeah, life is great. No, these are the things that I still have to work on and go through every single day. I fight for my life and my peace every single day, and that's part of it. It's part of it. Like going through the abusive relationship I just left for a year, I was traumatized sexually as well because of certain things she said and how she navigated with me in that department of our relationship, to coming into a healthy relationship with someone who I can feel sexually free with. But I had to master that from 7 to 14 years old, off and on being abused, where I had to reprogram the brain about sex. Because when I was having sex with people, I was numb. I was numb. I didn't, the next morning I woke up as like I dissociated. What did it for me? The addiction that I had where sex was concerned is the chase, is the people giving me attention. Oh my, you're beautiful. You have a nice body. This, the next, and the other. That's the part that turned me on. But actually having sex with people, I was just like, ugh, I could be having a pizza right now. What's laundry? What am I going to wear to work tomorrow? I wasn't there. I was not present in any aspect when it came to that. And so I had to learn, like, okay, you got to sit with yourself. And there's certain things that I did. One thing was I had to ask the little girl inside of me, the 7 to 14-year-old, to forgive me, the grown woman, for putting her through so much fucking pain in my 20s and my 30s. I had to ask her to forgive me. I had to ask the teenager in me and a 20 something year in me for forgiveness for putting them through so much fucking pain and for not allowing them to feel any form of safety. No form of safety. And that's the hardest thing you can do as a human being, is when, and you know this, Amber, going through the process of doing the work and what the work looks like when you're sitting by yourself in silence, and all
Mhm.
of those fucking reflections of shit that you put yourself through. Oh my God, why did I do that to myself? And how come I went so far? Why didn't I get out soon enough? All of the questions.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just like how it's confronting the self.
Yeah. That's huge. So I just want to recap and make sure that I hear you correctly. The reason that you're so passionate and authentic in sharing your story is that you really want to make light of what this journey is truly about. You don't want to sugarcoat it. You want people to know that the darkness does come and that you can work through it. And it's so important to recognize and be self aware, and that this journey can be so beautiful, but there are dark parts. There are parts that don't feel so great. And so you want to be fully authentic when you are speaking and encouraging others on their journey, because there are really shitty parts and you're very open about that.
Yeah.
And so not only that, it also helps you
Hmm.
heal and work through different layers of what you're going through, and honor still each time that you maybe talk about it validates those parts of you, that little
Hmm.
girl, that teenage girl. Each time you honor it and talk about it. Is that close?
Oh, yeah, that's accurate to a T. Those dark moments that you go through, especially when you've been molested as a child or abused as a child, whatever, it stays with you. I had a session with my trauma coach, and I was telling her I was having a very hard time forgiving my mother because I felt like my mother dropped the ball on me growing up when that happened to me. And there's certain things that she's done in the past. And my trauma coach told me I have the ability to forgive my mom, and I've forgiven my mom several times because I kept going back trying to rebuild a relationship with her. She said, you can still honor your truth of saying to her and saying to yourself that it's still what happened to me was not okay. And I don't have to forgive the behavior. I don't have to forgive the action. I don't have to forgive what happened to me. I can forgive her because she's a soul. She's a spirit. She was put here for a reason. She's a human being. She has emotions and feelings. Da 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 da. She's my mother. But I was having the fucking hardest time forgiving that of what happened to me because I felt like I was forcing the forgiveness of the action. And I realize now it's not okay because people, when I would share my story, people would be like, oh my God, I'm so sorry that happened to you. And I'd be like, oh no, it's okay. It's fine. And they're like, no, it's not okay. And I had to embrace and admit to myself that that shit was not fucking okay. I was violated for no reason by someone who I thought loved me and protected me and was there to take care of me, and he didn't.
Yeah, that's huge. So that's such a huge struggle. Would you say that that is the biggest struggle, or what would you
Hmm.
say the biggest struggle in working through those sexual traumas would be? And can you share a tool or approach that
Yeah.
you use to help you overcome that?
I think the biggest struggle for me was looking for acceptance and validation and approval outside of myself. I became a people pleaser. I wanted people to
Mm.
love me so bad. I wanted people to see me, to validate me, to value me, because I felt like in my life, I wasn't chosen. I felt like my parents didn't pick me. I felt my parents didn't choose me. And I had to realize I have to choose myself. I have to choose myself. I cannot wait for anyone else to choose me, validate me, approve me, accept me, all that. So the first thing that I would say to anyone that's going through this, the first step is to forgive yourself. Forgive yourself and know that any type of assault, trauma, molestation, whatever, it is not your fault. Do not blame yourself. And if you were in a situation of promiscuity, forgive yourself. Forgiveness is every single day until you no longer feel that guilt, feel that shame, feel that embarrassment, whatever it is, until you don't feel it no more, you got to forgive yourself every single day. And it's a process because shit's going to pop up when you're having sex or when you're thinking about sex. Like when I got out of that abusive relationship, I was on TikTok just scrolling and I saw two beautiful women. Oh my God, they were so gorgeous. I was like, oh my gosh, she is hot. And I had to like really catch myself. I'm like, no, you're not having sex for a very long time. This isn't good. What are you doing? You know what I'm saying? And I had to realize you're still human. You're still gonna look. They're women. They're beautiful, but that doesn't mean that the promiscuous part of you is gonna come out. You control you. You
Mm.
control you. So it's learning that you control you. And also the other thing I would say is to forgive the promiscuous part of you. If you are a promiscuous person, if you're a person that's highly sexual, if you have an insatiable appetite for sex, forgive the promiscuous part of yourself because it's part of who you are.
Yeah, that's huge. Would you say that just that it makes sense why you're promiscuous, why you crave that, right? So
Mm-hmm.
I hear a lot of people who have gone through this that, what's wrong with me? But it
Mm-hmm.
makes so much sense to have that extremely high appetite. Even people who deal with porn, it's that they've had that same type of dopamine hit, that same validation.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of circles back to what you were saying. The hardest part is that we're seeking that validation. Do you see me? Do I matter to you? Do I matter at all?
Am I enough?
Yeah. And I would say if people have not experienced that outside of sex, it would make so much sense to go to that, to feed that craving, because it is actually a need,
Yep.
because we need validation from ourselves. that is essential.
Mm-hmm.
I also believe that we need validation from source and that it is good and healthy to get validation from others as well.
Mm-hmm.
But when solely lean into one or the other is kind of where it puts our energy and focus out of balance.
That's true.
How do you feel about that?
Absolutely accurate and right. And I feel too, because of people, especially women who've been through sexual trauma, they don't give themselves permission to enjoy pleasure. I know for me, the way that I was abused was the person that abused me went down on me. And, trigger disclaimer right now, if this happened to you, please hear me out what I'm about to say. And it'll change it'll make a game changer for you. So he went down on me, and for a very long time, like I didn't enjoy that at all. And I had to and I would see his face when the person was doing it to me. I would see the person's face in my head, and I had to sit with myself and say, okay, this happened to you, but it does not define who you are. You are responsible to give yourself permission to say, okay, I enjoy this. I really like having people be, well, my partner, but I enjoy oral. That's just something that I enjoy. I love it. I enjoy it. It takes me to another frequency. It's a fucking natural aphrodisiac high, whatever the case may be. But first, it's owning that you like certain things. If you like doggy style, if you like missionary, whatever it is, if you like that thing and that's the thing that you were traumatized by or you were sexually abused in that way, it's being able to, first of all, I always encourage women, if you haven't, masturbate. Masturbate. Learn your body, what you like from what you don't like, because that's one way of taking your power and your permission back from anyone who traumatized you.
Those are huge things that you're talking about right now. I just want to circle back before we get too far. You were saying that if you've ever been sexually traumatized in an area and taken advantage of, and you still feel pleasure from that act,
Honor that pleasure.
that right there, that is really, really huge. And I could only imagine the confusion and the mixed emotions
Hmm.
in that. Can you just talk a little bit more about that topic right there?
The confusion comes in because you haven't really dug deep into yourself with your healing process. You are still a prisoner of the abuse. So you can't enjoy pleasure, and there's a guilt and a shame and a fear that comes with that. But because before the abuse happened, for me, I was 7 to 14 years old, so I didn't know anything about sex, pleasure, oral sex. Da, da, da. I was 7 to 14 years old, but there are certain women that have had that happen to them in their 20s, in their 30s, in their 40s, or whatever. And so sex for them has never been the same because of the violation that was taking place. So if you go back in those times before it happened to you, and if you were a sexually free person, then it's going to fuck with your head like real bad, because it's like, well, shit. I was a sexually free person and now I am a shell of myself. How do I get back to that person? You can't get back to that person. That person died. She died, right? So it's honoring the death, reclaiming the power back. You can still have the feeling and the emotion, but you're going to do it in a different way. So now you have to create a new way of how you want to experience pleasure and how you want to experience sex. But this time around, you're owning your power. You are standing in your power and you're telling your partner or partners or whoever it is, this is what I like. This is what I don't like. This is what may trigger me. This don't trigger me. And have the conversation. That's the best way to do it, because at that point, you are in control of your mind, heart, and your body. And then the trigger and trauma responses won't pop up. You won't brace yourself because you are in full control, because you're commanding and you're demanding the sexual respect that you need, desire, deserve, and want from the person. So you've set that boundary.
Phoenix, this is huge because I just have to say, as somebody who hasn't experienced sexual trauma along those lines,
Mm-hmm.
sexuality and sex in general has always been such a weird topic, I grew up very religious.
Mm-hmm.
And so sex was always a bad, sinful,
Mm-hmm.
shameful, yucky thing, right? And then
Mm-hmm.
instantly, when you're supposed to be married, you're supposed to be this very sexual person
Yeah.
who meets all of these needs, right? And so there's what you're saying also resonates so much with me, and I think with everybody sexually in general,
Mm-hmm.
because we just don't have these conversations. And I think that the programming from society, from religion, from whatever,
Mm-hmm.
paints this very fantasy picture that people are just supposed to know what to do
Mm-hmm.
and not communicated about it, right?
Mm-hmm.
As an example, my husband and I, we were doing counseling to work through some of these things.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, "Have you ever thought about texting and saying, 'Hey, I really want to have sex when you get home?'"
Mm-hmm.
And we were like, "What? You don't do that. It's supposed to just happen." And she's like, "No, actually, you can communicate about it, and it makes it for such a more beautiful experience because you can plan, you can build up."
Yes.
But the communication, like you were saying, is so huge when we can actually say, "Hey, that feels good. I don't really like that."
Mm-hmm.
And I think this goes back to, and I would love to hear your thoughts on it, is having a safe person
Absolutely.
to be able to communicate these things with. And if you've never experienced safety, how the fuck would you know how to communicate?
I think the first part about that is being safe with yourself
Mm,
and giving yourself permission to say, I want to experience pleasurable sex, and
mm.
removing the misconception and the stigma of how sex is supposed to be. And sex is however you want it to be. If you are a person that likes to be tied up, then that's a conversation to have, but it's something that you have to explore within yourself.
So would you say that self-awareness, just honoring, hey, like I think about this. This might be something that I want to try without that shame and guilt because somewhere somebody said that that is bad.
Yes, exactly. Because for me, my ex husband, for instance, we were together, my second ex husband, we were together 9 years, and he would say, You're a closet lesbian. And I was so fucking unaware of myself. And so when I had my near death experience in 2011, something shifted in me, and I started looking at women differently the way that he saw me looking at women. And I had to have a conversation with him. We had an hour conversation. We sat on a couch, and I was like, I want to explore and experiment having sex with a woman because I feel like that's what I'm drawn to. And we had the conversation for an hour, and he was like, You have my blessing to do that, but just bring it into our home. I want you to be safe. And that's how I figured out that I was a full blown lesbian, because the more that I had sex with women, the less I wanted to have sex with him. And then I realized that's why it wasn't pleasurable and enjoyable. It wasn't enjoyable to me that when I was having sex with men, like I did the comparison. Being with a woman feels like home to me. Being with a man is just like, this is a chore. I'm not enjoying this. Like, vagina was Mojave Desert, Sahara Desert, like nothing, you know? So for me, it was just like, but when I'm with a woman, it's just like, oh my God, this feels so good. It feels like home. This is how sex is supposed to feel. And so sometimes you got to explore.
Mm. Do you think that that had anything to do with the sexual trauma?
To an certain extent, it had to do with the sexual trauma. But when I look back in hindsight, I remember being 4 to 5 years old, and it was me and a couple of cousins, and one of the cousins was older than me. She was a girl. And I remember we were under the bed, they were playing hide and seek, and I ended up kissing on her. She was kissing up on me, or whatever the case may be. And I also remember that there was a neighbor upstairs from my mom's, and I would make out with her and make out with a step cousin, and they were both women. And so it kind of like yes and no. It's a yes and no question for me.
Right. It's
And so
like
for me,
the chicken or
yeah,
the egg, which one was born
right,
first?
right, right. So for me, I'm a person that I like to experiment and explore, because even within my relationship with my second ex husband, I had a polyamorous relationship. It was me, him, and my girlfriend. We all lived together for a year. And that was one way for me to know, like fully know within myself. Like,
Right.
yeah, women is where it's at. You don't, I love men, don't get me wrong. Men are beautiful and attractive, but their equipment down there, you couldn't even pay me $1 million. Not even at all.
So I love you so much. And I love the way that you can freely talk about these things because I think that so many people can't, and that's one of the reasons I love having these conversations.
Hmm.
How do you think, Phoenix, that you got to a place where you could accept and honor what you were feeling? I know that so many people struggle
Hmm.
with not feeling that guilt and shame for feeling these things.
Hmm.
How did you get there? People want to know how to make that shift, how to go from that guilt and shame to honoring and forgiving yourself.
I had to sit with myself in a place of not judging myself anymore for what I liked and not judging myself anymore or beating up myself because of what I thought society or people or family or friends would think of me anymore. I had to like really release that from myself. And I think me having a near death experience taught me a lot because I was on a deathbed going, I shoulda, coulda, woulda, and I didn't. And I always tell people, don't wait until something drastic happens. Don't wait until you're on your deathbed. Don't wait until you have a fucking accident or something. Like, your life is supposed to be lived right now in real fucking time. In real time. Our biggest commodity, and my guest on my podcast said it earlier today, is time. Because we don't know how long we have. We know our birth date, we don't know our death date. And that dash in between, like Lisa Nichols says, that dash, you got to ask yourself every day, like, what do I want to experience and what do I want to create? So I would tell people, sit with yourself and ask yourself, especially people who are very like sexual, have an insatiable appetite, ask themselves, what do I want to create with my life sexually? What does that look like to me? First, define sex. What does sex look like to you? How do you define sex? Everyone's definition of sex is different. And it doesn't necessarily mean I want to get tied up and bondage and S&M and all this other shit. No, it's what does sex and intimacy look like to you? How do you want to create it? What does safety with sex look like to you? What's pleasure? How do you want to be pleasured? Do you want to pleasure yourself? Do you want to play like what is that whole thing? And just go into your mind. Give yourself permission to go into your mind and put it on a piece of paper. Just lay it out plain and simple. The way that you would do a fucking business plan. Just think
Mm.
about all the things. And also too, give yourself permission to grieve who you thought you were sexually. Because that's not you. Because we get so caught up with society and the misconceptions of sex, and then we tie in like what pornography looks like and all. That's not what that is. That's pure fantasy fucking bullshit. Like, you figure out what sexual reality looks like to you and sexual fantasy looks like to you. That's what you got to figure out.
So I love, and I think I'm hearing too, one of the big things is exploring, becoming
Yes.
curious, questioning,
Yes.
which I feel like we're so programmed to not do. Don't
Mhm.
think outside the box. Don't step outside the box. Don't question the norms. Follow the rules. Do all of these things. And we're not given ourselves permission to explore, to think, to question.
Yes.
My husband and I just had a crazy, amazing conversation about sex and sexuality and
Mhm.
relationship and what that looks like and feels like. Are we on the same page? Do we still
Mhm.
feel the same? And I could have never done that before if I didn't have a safe person to do that with.
Exactly.
And and if I didn't get to a point where I, like you said, forgave myself and I was able to be okay with other people not agreeing how I feel.
Exactly. And that's the thing right there. That's the key. You don't have to agree with other people of how you feel. It's about you. It's not about them. And that's the biggest issue that we have as human beings. We're so fucking caught up in, oh my God, who is this going to save? Da, da, da. Like for me, perfect example, I'm in a new relationship after 4 months in after leaving an abusive relationship. You know what I'm saying? And people are like, you're not fully healed. How come you just got into another relationship? Da, 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 da. And this has been the story of my life when it came to relationships, you know, being married and divorced 3 times. And I hope that's your last marriage. I hope that you don't get divorced again. I hope this, da, 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 da. So it's like people putting themselves in your life and you know exactly how you want to live your life. For me, I'm a person that I say fuck it and jump and I take risk in life because you just never know. I'm not going to
I
pass
love it.
up a good person because of what that other person did to me that was shitty. Like it's not their fault. And I'm going to do a disservice to myself if I don't give myself an opportunity to see where this is. And it goes back to the woulda, shoulda, coulda. You don't know if you're going to get triggered. Like say for instance, people are like when you're in a narcissistic abusive relationship, you're supposed to give yourself a year to 2 years to go through your healing process and be alone. I get that. But at the same time, when you go into a relationship and that person does something similar to the other person, which is innocent, your ass is going to get fucking triggered. So the 2 years you took in your healing journey by your goddamn self, you're going to be like, what the fuck? I thought I healed. No, the fuck you didn't.
Right. But I don't think we ever completely heal from that. It's not about making that shit go away. It's about being aware of it and working through it.
We don't. Right, exactly. Because there's things that my girlfriend does and says sometimes, and I have to be like, babe, that's kind of like triggering me. And the same thing goes for her. There's certain things that I do, and she's just like, I need to be heard, and this, that, next, and the third, or whatever it is. And we still work through it. We're 4 months in, but there's a lot of shit that's coming up, and we're fucking working through it to the point where sometimes I run a run, and sometimes she wants to run, but we're like, no, we're going to try to stick this shit out. I'm like, fuck this.
Right.
I just fight or flight. I'm in survival mode right now
Yeah.
because you said some dumb bullshit. Or she'll shut down and I shut down, and we're both like, okay, well, we're not shutting down right now. We're going to talk about this shit. Like last night, I was like, fuck it. I'm going to take a shower. I'm going to call you later. And I hung up the phone. And then she's texting me, I'm sorry. This was not my intention. Da, 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 da. And then my heart is like, oh my God, I love her so much. And I texted her, I love her. But that wasn't enough. I had to
Yeah.
be like, call her, FaceTime, I love you too.
Mhm.
You know what I'm saying? So it's going through those motions, but it takes time. And, you know, she was in a relationship for 6 years and then she's been single for 2 years. Through her healing process, there's things that was in a relationship that's triggering her in our relationship. So that's what I'm saying. You could be by yourself for 5, 6 years or whatever, and then you're like, okay, I feel like I'm ready to be in a relationship now. And then all of the shit that happens in a previous relationship that another person is doing, not intentionally, just innocently, you know, whatever, or maybe a conversation, or maybe a song that they play pops it to your head, and you go in fight or flight mode immediately, automatically.
So it's not about there's this duality. Yes, you do need to work on yourself. It is important to heal and do the work, but it's not about you're never going to be completely healed and ready for a new relationship.
Never.
You're going to go through the shit. You're going to experience the triggers. It's not about making the triggers go away.
Hmm.
Though that shit never goes away.
Nope.
It just gets a little bit less the safer your relationship and that person becomes, but it never completely goes away.
Yeah. I can tell you that when I moved to Savannah, I was, don't look at me, don't touch me, don't smell me, get the fuck out of my aura. I don't want to deal with nobody. And when I met my girlfriend, and we talk about it till this day, like, I don't know what it is about her that my spirit guides came to me and said, this is the relationship you need because there's a healing in it for you. It's not a relationship you want and desire. It's a relationship you deserve. It's a relationship that you need, and there's a healing in the relationship for you.
So I remember when you text me and you're like, hey, I'm in this new relationship. I'm super excited. And I remember the conversation we had about just being supported and loved where you are.
Mm-hmm.
And you were saying how nice it was just to have people who weren't like, oh, it's too fast, you're in a new relationship.
Yeah.
How is that support and having safe connections and validation and just people loving you where you are, how does that play a role in your healing today?
It means everything to me because, like I said, over the course of the years in my life, my relationships have been the one department in my life where I felt like I didn't trust my gut. I made the wrong decisions. I was just like, because I tend to bow out gracefully in situations at times, and sometimes I just tend to run.
Mm,
And with me being a runner in relationships, when shit gets hard, um, I can understand why family and friends are like, well, damn, another relationship, this, that, da, 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 da. But at the same time, for me, it's like if I feel like this shit isn't working and I'm getting in my head and I'm doing this and I'm doing that, and if I don't feel safe, then yeah, a bitch is gonna run because I don't feel safe. You know what I
yeah,
mean? So for me, that support means everything because it's like you're loving me for me. You're not loving me for who I'm sleeping with. You're not loving me for, how many times I've been having a broken heart or how many times I've been hurting, how many wrong decisions in relationship I've made. No, you're just loving me for me, the person, the human being, the spiritual being having a human experience. You're loving Phoenix. You're loving Phoenix Freedom. You're loving her awareness and her consciousness and her growth. You are being a cheerleader. You're reciprocating the same thing I reciprocate to you because when my friends come to me with shit, I literally hold space and I'm quiet and I just let them know I'm here. I don't give a fuck how many times you have to have the same conversation over and over again because that is an indication to me that you're not fully healed from it. You're not healed yet. And you need to talk about it until you no longer feel the guilt, the shame, the fear, whatever it is. So I'm going to sit here and talk to you, even though in my head sometimes like, oh my fucking goodness, Jesus Christ, we're having a conversation again. But I'm not going to tell you that because you need to get it out.
right. Do you find that people who love you where you are
Mm-hmm.
and validate that it validates also yourself and trusting yourself when in before you were programmed to not trust yourself and very disassociated from self. And so
Mm-hmm.
having people around you who are like, hey, do you, we love you, whatever that looks like for you, we love
Mm-hmm.
you and we trust that you're going to do the best for you, and if it's not, then you're going to do something different about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think for me, I had to release the pattern of wanting the validation and acceptance, approval of my decisions from other people. And
Hmm.
learning you're a grown ass woman, own your validation, own your approval, and your acceptance of yourself with the decisions you're making for you. You don't have to go to anybody for them to give you the fucking red light, green light, okay, that you're doing a great job in this relationship, or you're doing a great job with your business, or you're doing a great job on your journey. No, be self reliant.
Right.
Be self-reliant. You don't need the approval and acceptance validation from your mother, your father, sister, uncle, brother, Jesus, leprechaun, whoever the fuck. You don't need it. You don't need it.
So you don't need it. You give it to yourself, but it feels fucking great when people are surrounding you that also give you that. It heightens that. It brings it to a different level.
It's us.
And so I think people get that so confused that they look at that outside validation as like bad almost. Like, I don't need that. I don't have to have that. And you don't have to have it, but it feels good. And it goes back to that pleasure thing. It goes back to this deep programming from somewhere that we are not supposed to feel pleasure.
Exactly. We are not supposed to feel pleasure. Your only goal when it comes to having sex is to produce children.
Hmm.
You are not supposed to feel good. All that stuff that comes along with it. You're not supposed to touch your body when it comes to having sex. You're not supposed to know what you want when it comes to having sex. You're supposed to just lay there on your back as a woman and let this man insert his sperm into you and you get pregnant and carry that child for 9 months and forget about your goddamn self because your identity as a woman, as a sexual being, a sensual being, a spiritual being having a human experience is null and void because now your identity is a mother and a wife.
Hmm. So how do you think that you break that mold? Does that go back to the curiosity and just exploring and validating those parts of you that you can be the mom, that you can be the wife, but you can also be this beautiful sexual being?
I would say whatever hunger you have inside of you, feed the fucking hunger before you die. Emotionally, mentally, spiritually, feed the hunger. If you're hungry, because like I tell my girlfriend too sometimes, like I remember one time I was at her house and I was doing work and I just got really horny. I'm like, babe, meet me upstairs in 5 minutes. Meet me upstairs in 5 minutes. Or sometimes I'll text her, I'm like, I'm craving you, I'm desiring you, I long for you. Like your partner wants to hear that.
Right.
They want to hear that they're still desirable, no matter if you're together 4 months, a month, 10 years, 20, whatever the case. I still want you. I still want to have this insatiable, sexual, pleasurable experience with you.
Yes.
I want to honor that you make me feel a certain kind of way when it comes to sex and pleasure. I want to honor myself that I'm safe enough with you to feel these emotions and feelings where pleasure and sex is concerned.
Yeah, exactly.
That's why I go back to saying about masturbation,
Mhm.
because self pleasure is the only way you're going to know if you really, really like this or that.
Right, and you can try it and you're like, "Okay, this isn't for me." Like, that was for
Right,
me. For me, it feels like I'm, like, basting a turkey. Like, it just doesn't do it for me, you know
right,
what I mean? But, I mean, I tried it, and so but getting curious.
right. It's just being curious. And like, even I'm the type of person I would go to the sex store with my partners.
Mhm.
My ex-husband, my ex-wife, my girlfriends, whatever, we would go to the sex store because I'm like, what do you like? Okay, what do you like? Do you like this? Do you like that? Does that turn you on? I want to have a mental note of like, okay, so when I'm with you in the bedroom, I know what you like from what you don't like. I know what you like from me for what I don't like. You know what I'm saying? That
Yeah.
type of stuff, you have to have those type of conversations because people get caught up in when they're dating and so on and so forth. That first sexual encounter for a lot of people are awkward as fuck because they don't know what to do because they haven't talked about it. Even when it comes to the first kiss,
Yes.
they don't talk about it.
Well, and I think that even people who are married for a long time, like my husband and I have been married 13 years, we still talk about it because you change.
Yeah.
What you like
Mhm.
changes. It could change. It doesn't have to, but it can. And so
Mhm.
continuing to have the conversation. And I think it's so important what you said is that desire to be wanted. We all want to
Mhm.
be wanted. We've been married
Mhm.
13 years and we both still desire to have the other person be like, "Hey, I want you."
Exactly.
That doesn't go away just because we've been
Mm-mm.
married or you're with somebody for a long time,
Mhm.
and it's important, and that's okay. It is
Exactly.
okay to want and need that, and I think that again, this kind of goes back to, you know, turning off or feeling like we can't feel pleasure. And I'm not
Yeah.
really sure. I think I feel that as a society that
Mhm.
we are programmed to not with everything that everything has to be so hard to come by that
Mhm.
can't just enjoy things without a lot of pain, like there is
Yeah.
no pleasure without pain, and so we forget that things can just be pleasurable and it's okay to feel good.
Yeah.
And I would say from a religious background, I talk to so many people that pleasure is associated with shame so much.
It is. It is. And that's why like I tip my hat off to porn stars, majority of them that are really, really enjoying themselves sexually and enjoying the pleasure because they don't give a fuck. They're like very open with it. They're expressive with it. This is their form of freedom for them, you know? So for me, it's just like I I'm a free spirit. I love my freedom. My emotional freedom, my sexual freedom, my physical freedom, all of it. And I always tell women who are having such the hardest time when it comes to their bodies, I always tell them, take your clothes off and look at yourself in the mirror and just love everything about you. Everything about you, every stretch mark, fat roll, blemish, whatever it is, it's your body. The longest relationship you're going to have is with yourself.
And that's huge because when my husband and I were dealing a lot with he dealt a lot with porn, and it was something that was really hard for us,
Hmm.
growing up religious. It just was something that was super hard for both of
Hmm.
us that we had to work
Hmm.
through. That when we went through this whole thing learning about porn, it was so much more about emotions. And I think that that's something, that we don't really talk about so much in that sexual aspect, that it does come back to emotions and how we feel, and our thoughts, and really feeling safe. And what I learned is that a lot of people who do watch porn, or have affairs, it's because they really are not feeling safe in their relationship and being able to talk about things, and also the fear of rejection. And the fear of rejection,
But also to suppression. They're suppressing.
well, and porn and all of these things, you don't get rejected, and you don't have to be
Hmm.
vulnerable. So vulnerability within
Hmm.
sex, we're talking about communication. It requires vulnerability,
Yeah.
and so all of these things are wrapped up into all of this, and really being able to be aware of all of this at the same time when you are looking at your sexuality, when you're looking at sex, when you're looking at relationships. I think it's so important just to recognize, to question, hey, what's going on with me? Like you were saying, become self aware. What do I
Hmm.
feel? Recognizing where you feel safe, why you don't feel safe. Where is that coming from? Is that coming from abandonment
Hmm.
or rejection, or all of
Yep.
these things? It's so much wrapped into it.
And also being safe with yourself.
Yes.
Being safe with yourself, because a lot of people don't trust themselves, and a lot of people don't are not safe with themselves. There's certain people that cannot be by themselves for even 10 minutes because their thoughts get the best of them, and they don't want to sit with their thoughts. They don't want to sit with the fear. They don't want to sit with the shame. They don't want to sit with the judgment. They don't want to sit with the fact that they made mistakes and they have regrets. They don't want to sit with that shit, so they will go and work and go out and drink and do this so that they don't have to deal with that shit. But eventually, it's like when you're taking drugs or you're drinking. When you come back from that high, the fucking problem's still there.
Right.
It's still there.
Right. And so I think one of the big things that is so hard for people is how to sit and how to not feel those things. And what kind of tools,
Hmm.
was it counseling? Was it journaling? What tools really helped you to be able to do that?
It was journaling, and it was also allowing the little girl in me to tell me what she needs and wants. So I'll give her voice. So I sat with myself. I got very quiet and I said, Little Vicky, because that's my nickname. That's what people call me. What is it that you need me to know? What is it that you want to express to me when I was your age and I didn't have a voice? You're safe to tell me these things. And I just sat with myself, and I don't know how I did it, but I was able to connect my subconscious mind with my conscious mind, and she spoke to me.
Mm,
Because those are two separate things, a conscious mind and a subconscious mind. The subconscious mind is a part of the mind that actually creates the fear and the anxiety and all those things because it's trying to protect you,
right.
quote unquote. But if you are able to connect the conscious and the subconscious mind, do you understand how fucking powerful you can be?
Yes.
So allowing the little person inside of you to come forward and speak his or her or their truth. Let them have the opportunity. Give them permission to say all that needs to be said that you didn't say when you were growing up. Whatever happened to you when you were growing up, give them the floor to say so.
Mm,
And then whatever it is that they say to you, honor those feelings, honor those requests. It could be anywhere from, the day when mom took me outside and I wanted to get ice cream and she told me no and she yelled at me because she was so in her mind, she was going through whatever the case may be, and she took out shit on me and I didn't get my ice cream. Go and get some fucking ice cream.
Right. Yes. And this is huge. We talk about trauma often, and that trauma can look so different. And we don't compare trauma because our body affects the same way. Our body just
Yeah.
says we were not given what we were needed and we were abandoned in those moments. That's all our body knows.
Yeah. There's this show on Netflix. It's called Sex, Love, and Goop by Gwyneth Paltrow. And it's a really, really powerful educational series. And it's about different couples who experience different things growing up. And one woman, she said she didn't realize during sex that she was always bracing, that her body was always in fight and flight mode, and that her body was always tight until she met with the sexologist that was helping her and her husband find new ways to pleasure each other. That's when she realized that she'd been bracing for a very long time, and that became her normal. So if you find yourself having sex and you are not present mentally, emotionally, spiritually, physically in your body and in yourself, it's time to get in tune with you and try to pay attention to what that is and why.
Mm.
Why it's happening. For me, it used to be that way, and my sacral and my root chakras would be braced like tight like this. I had to learn how to open it up. I had to learn to give my vagina permission to feel pleasure. Sometimes us as women, we got to talk to our vaginas. We got to be like, okay, bitch, what's wrong with you today? What's going on with you? The fuck?
Right. Yes.
You know? And if you were promiscuous, the one thing that I did too is I held my vagina in my hand in the shower one day or in the tub one day, and I asked her to forgive me for abusing her the way that I have.
Mm.
Powerful, right?
That's so powerful.
Talk to her. I'm sorry for allowing all these men to just run through you like you're a piece of meat, because you're not. You are beautiful. You are a precious jewel. I honor you. I celebrate you. I give you permission to feel.
That is huge.
It starts with self forgiveness. Forgive yourself every fucking single day until that feeling of fear and shame and guilt and judgment dissipates. Like Lisa Nichols says, when you have fear, sit with it long enough because it has to dissipate. So if you have shame, fear, guilt, judgment, sit with it long enough until it dissipates.
So, what I think I hear you saying really in a couple of your answers is sitting, being still, getting quiet. I think so much that we want to use tools, we want to work our way through it, we want to find the keys, we want to do something. And sometimes we have to do nothing and sit in the uncomfortable and just listen.
Yes, listen to your inner self, listen to your being. Just be, just sit. And sit in it means cry it out, scream it out, shout it out. Let it the fuck out. Do not suppress and suffocate yourself anymore. Don't isolate those emotions and feelings. If you're angry, be fucking angry. If you're enraged, be enraged.
Yeah, honor whatever you're feeling in that moment.
Yes, honor whatever. Because here's the thing, you can have as many tools as you want to. You can have many tools as you want to. But if you're not sitting with the tools, if you're not sitting with the anger and the rage, the hurt, the pain, whatever you're feeling, and you're just like your mind and your spirit and your body and your heart is not in tune, not as one, nothing's going to happen. But also the other part about that is you have to be mentally, emotionally, and spiritually ready to feel unfucking comfortable.
Yeah, that's huge.
You gotta be willing to feel uncomfortable. You gotta have the preparation to be messy with yourself.
Because most of the time we have disassociated, we have used coping mechanisms so that we don't feel those things.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, in order to really go any further on your healing process, you need to sit and be triggered and feel those things and see what comes up for you.
Yes, I'm a master of being uncomfortable. I have a PhD in that shit. Like I thrive in fucking uncomfortable areas of my life where I'm like,
Well, that's where growth is.
but that is where growth is. That's where you get to identify your true self.
Yes.
You get to identify your true self when you're going through the shit, when you're walking on the glass, when you're walking on the coal, when you're walking through the fire. that is when you're able to really, really, really own, honor, embrace, and accept the true self.
I would agree.
Like Lisa Nichols says, she says, when fear and judgment and challenges and struggle come up, you rise the fuck up higher. Rise up higher.
So, what would you say to people who, are ready to share their story? Where do they start?
I wouldn't say drastic as me because a bitch like me, when I came out, I did a whole fucking photo shoot at 40 years old and I plastered it on Facebook. I'm gay, but that's just me. um, I would say to speak to and share your truth with those who are closest to you, that love you for you, who will not judge you, who will support you and hold space for you. Call on your
Mm,
tribe.
that's huge.
That's what I
That's
would say.
huge. Phoenix, we covered so much in this episode. I mean, we could just talk about this for hours.
I know.
I want to thank you for just your extreme vulnerability and your authenticity in such a taboo topic in society.
Hmm.
I think that it's so
Hmm.
essential for so many people, those who have been through sexual trauma, but those who just are trying to navigate sex in general. I think what you have spoke on is so important. So thank you so much again for being here and for sharing.
Absolutely. My pleasure, no pun intended.
I love it. If you want to learn more about what Phoenix does or all her amazing books that are out, all the information will be linked in the description below. And do a quick plug about your own podcast, please.
Okay, so the name of the podcast is Starting Over in Life Expert, and I bring on amazing guests like Amber. She was on there, and we would just be talking about different ways how we started over in life, personally, professionally, what we learned from it, and also just sharing different tips and tricks and techniques on starting over in life. And of course, like I like to have my guests come on and just plug their businesses, anything that they're doing, whatever they're going through, and just share. And it's just like a honest, open, transparent podcast, just like Amber's, where you could say fuck shit, bitch, the whole 9 yards.
Which is one reason I love you. But it's
Right.
great. I was honored to be on her podcast. It is extremely vulnerable and just, again, authentic, everything that Phoenix is about. So please go check out her stuff. Thank you again, Phoenix.
Absolutely.
The content provided in this podcast is for informational purposes only and is not intended as a substitute for professional medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment. The intention of the host and guests is to spread love and awareness. Always seek the advice of your physician or trusted healthcare provider with any questions you may have regarding a medical condition. Never disregard professional medical advice or delay in seeking it because of something you've heard in this podcast. Before we wrap it up, I've got some podcast gems for you. We have Heather Harrington's Hot Mess Espresso. Her resilience and vibrant energy are just what you need on your healing journey. Also, give a listen to Hunter Allen's Everything is Connected podcast for some refreshing insights on emotional intelligence and mental health. Please go check them out. You definitely won't be disappointed.